I'm Eric Brunson, and today I will be going over poverty in America. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, it is whether we provide for those who have too little. And that was from Franklin D. Roosevelt. Today I'm going to share some interesting facts about poverty. Why is this important to you? Poverty affects everyone, all of us. It's not just a problem developing developing countries or third world countries. It is a major problem right here in our own country, in our own state, and in our own city. Now, many people believe they can't help in the ending of poverty, or the little help that they can provide doesn't make a difference. Often that belief comes from fully not understanding what poverty is. I'm hoping to help bring some truth about poverty to you today. Who knows, by the end of this, you might even want to help join the fight for poverty. Serving those in need is something that more people should hold dear to their heart, and it is something they should strive for. Poverty is about not having enough money to meet basic needs, including food, clothing, and shelter. However, poverty is much more than just not having money. The World Bank Organization describes poverty in this way. Poverty is hunger. Poverty is the lack of shelter. Poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor. Poverty is not having access to school and not knowing how to read. Poverty is not having a job. It is fear of the future and living one day at a time. Poverty has many faces, changing from place to place and across time, and has been described in many ways. Most often, poverty is a situation people want to escape. So poverty is a call to action for the poor and the wealthy alike, a call to change the world so that many more may have enough to eat. Adequate shelter, access to education and health, protection from violence, and a voice in what happens in their communities. In addition to a lack of money, poverty is about not being able to participate in recreational activities, not being able to send their children on field trips with their schoolmates or maybe to a birthday party that their kids want to go to. It is also about not being able to pay for medications when they have an illness. These are all costs of being poor. Those people who are barely able to pay for their food and shelter simply can't consider other expenses. When people are excluded within a society, when they are well educated, and when they have a higher incidence of illness, there's a system set up for this. The justice system and other systems provide support to those living in poverty that has an impact on our economy. What is poverty? Dictionary.com defines poverty as a state of condition of having little or no money, no goods, or the means of a support. The condition of being poor is what they would call it. The World Bank talks about poverty strictly in economic terms. However, the poor themselves define poverty as suffering relationships, marginalization, dependence, scarcity, restricted rights and freedoms. And by restricted freedoms is what I mentioned earlier about not being able to go on the day trips, maybe wanting to do the fun activities, excluded in many ways more than just providing clothing, food, and shelter. That information came from the Compassion International website, compassion.com. Some of the effects of poverty are poor health. Malnutrition makes up over 45% of all deaths of children, a staggering number. It's an extremely steep number for the deaths due to solely poor health. Diarrhea, which also comes from poor health, is one of the top 10 causes of death for over 1.5 million people annually. Diseases just as tuberculosis claims the lives of hundreds of thousands of people per year. Abuse is another effect of poverty. Children specifically living in poverty often experience abuse. And there are different types of abuse. There's neglect, sexual, spiritual, physical, and mental abuse. Now, I've told you a little bit about what poverty is. I'd like to tell you some of the causes of poverty. Some of the causes of poverty are epidemic, disease, and abuse, for example, are some of the effects. But they also are causes for poverty. Interestingly enough, many of the effects of poverty are indeed causes of poverty. This causes a vicious cycle that is very hard to break, which traps people and families for generations in this cycle of poverty. Food and agricultural issues are another cause of poverty. Natural disasters is something a lot of people don't think about. Think about the flood that happened a few years ago during Hurricane Harvey. It was astronomical and it was unprecedented. Think about the families that were in poverty when it happened and still have not recovered from it yet. It has completely crippled people for years to come, and it has created a lack of ability to get ahead in life and or stay where they are. It has now driven them even further into poverty. There are many who will never be able to recover without help. I've given the causes and effects of poverty and its everlasting cycle. Now I'm going to go through those who experience poverty. As you can probably guess, everyone is affected by poverty. Not just the poor, not just the rich and wealthy, but the whole world. And as you can see, I have a world picture of poverty. Everyone that is affected by poverty is everyone that has a hand in it. Poverty is a huge stress on social tensions, particularly over income and inequality. This is not just a third world problem. It happens every day, every minute, and every second right here in our own country. The pressure from income inequality mounts exponentially in America. And we see that through riots and clashes all the time. Crime is another effect of poverty. Anyone at any given time could be a victim of a crime. Those are the perpetrator of the crime that sought out the crime because they did not have the proper means to support themselves and or their families. When people don't have enough money, the government often step in with assistance and basic needs such as food, shelter, and health. The government gets the money from other citizens who are not in poverty, and that is where we all come into play. No matter how big or how small, we all play a role in the helping and changing of poverty. This is the poverty level of each state. As you can see, most of the northern states in the U.S. are they're doing much better than the southern states. And as us in Texas, we're about in the middle of the bracket. We could do better, but I think as a whole in America, I think we could all do better entirely. I think we could all do better. We've gone over an abundance of information about poverty, such as the causes and effects, how we're all a part of poverty, and the changing of it. We've went over some terms and some of the stressors in our country caused by inequality and poverty. Now I ask you, did I make you change your mind or your ideals about poverty? Did I give you some new things to think about? Or perhaps maybe I interested you in helping those in need? Expand on that. I want us all to be better. Remember, what we do affects everyone and everything around us at every time. Alright, well that was kind of crap.